but it's a graded descent into the unconscious. So in ISTDP, there's different phases called the central dynamic sequence. The first phase is called inquiry, which is where you try to get an understanding of the patient's problems, the nature of them, the severity of them, acute versus chronic, what was the onset, what are the triggers, what precipitates the symptomatology, okay? And we want to work in specifics. And so the patient might say, well, I have depression or whatever. Then you say, I get the idea, but could we look at some, for instances, some examples? So what you do is you take a fine-tooth comb and you look at instances in the patient's life that represent the problems. And then as you explore something that's emotionally charged, I mean, that would be universally emotionally charged, like being humiliated or rejected or, you know. Okay, then you link the fact that it's emotionally charged, but they're having symptoms instead of their feelings. So that's putting the patient on the triangle of conflict, right? So your boss humiliated you and made fun of you in front of everybody else, and you went into panic and self-deprecation. Could panic and self-deprecation unconsciously be replacing your feelings towards your boss? So you want, for starters, intellectual buy-in about that premise, that hypothesis. Assuming you get it, you can say then your path to freedom, your ticket to freedom is to face your feelings towards your boss. So you don't have to go through life limping with panic and self-deprecation and low self-esteem. Okay? So inquiry means you get a clear picture of the problems, the nature of the problems. You start exploring specific examples, triggers, and then you make this link. So this was an emotionally charged situation, but instead of having your feelings, typically it's the reactive one that we focus on first, meaning feelings towards the other person, positive, negative, loving, hating, okay? Instead of having those feelings, your loving and hating feelings, okay, you develop low self-esteem. And then you want intellectual buy-in on that premise so that they can buy into the therapeutic task. Your ticket to freedom is to face these feelings that are getting covered up and papered over and replaced but with low self-esteem. So the symptoms are the defenses. Okay? Here's what I'm hearing. Am I hearing this? And then he goes, yeah, sort of like that, but more like this. What's happening is that I'm trying to get a shared movie going, a shared dream where we're picturing the same thing. And I say, well, here's what I'm hearing. And then he goes, yeah, sort of like that, but a little bit more like this, until we get a picture. And then eventually, if that is done well, it's like we're in the same dream at the same time. We're watching the same movie at the same time. And that shared dream experience, or watching the same movie at the same time, it's both a really helpful barometer for determining whether or not the patient is open and collaborative as opposed to guarded and defended. Because when people are guarded and defended, they're not going to be forthcoming and clear and precise. So you won't get that picture, you won't get that dream. So it's both a really helpful barometer that we can use as a way of assessing how open or defended and guarded the patient is. And it's also a critical ingredient in the healing process itself, that there's something about establishing that kind of intimacy and closeness, watching the same movie, being in the same dream at the same time, that seems to be a mechanism of change and healing in its own right. So it's both. It's a tool for assessment, and it's a critical ingredient for the healing process itself.